we may be full circle on really unraveling the mystery. It has always been believed by most all of us who have known about the Meier case, particularly back in the early 80s, that we were given what we were told, that someone was coming from the Pleiades. They probably were our ancient ancestors. We didn't know any different than that, and we had no reason to really suspect that. Wendell is just giving you some information about the development of the German situation back in the 30s, because now, 20 years later, the answers are starting to come out in kind of full circle. I got involved in the case quite a little bit differently than Wendell. My interest was really in kind of the spiritual and historical information. And when I first heard about the Pleiadian case over at Meier's, I said, well, you know, if human life is really coming from someplace else and is that advanced, imagine what we could learn from them. And I had a few hundred questions I wanted to know about, you know, life and creation in the universe and so forth. So I eventually found my way over to Meier's house and wound up painting the barn, taking care of the chickens and all that, and living there for a long period of time, where I spent a lot of time with Billy. I had him all to myself for about 4 months, just he and I hanging out every day. So I drained his brain pretty good. And when I did that, I got together a collection of all of his information. It turned out that his contacts had gone on for about 3 years on a weekly basis. He had 115 contacts. He had over 2,000 pages of his own personal notes that he had taken of all of these conversations, which he turned over to me. We went all through them. I eventually put those into a book called The Pleiadian Mission, which some of you may know about. I have it here with me if you'd like to get a copy. My interest was trying to put this connection together with who we are on this earth. And if someone is coming from another world and they're saying our ancestors, is that true? Is there really a connection here? The Pleiadian material tells us that our forefathers were their forefathers, that human life from the Pleiades has been coming here a long time, that their forefathers were from a place called Lyra, that's where they descended from, and that is the seat of human life. Well, I studied all this information, and I was traveling about a year ago down in Florida giving a talk on this case. And actually, it was at the request of a young lady in Florida asked me to come down to speak to her group, which spoke Spanish. And I don't speak Spanish. So I had an interesting afternoon being translated and speaking very slowly and explaining myself. And then at the end of the talk, a young man came up to me and introduced himself and told me his name was Adrian. And he says, do you remember an evening about 6 years ago when you were living at Billy Meier's house and you were hearing voices in your head? And I kind of, I remember that. Yeah, but I've told a few people that, so that didn't surprise me. And he says, you heard your name called out, and then you got up, went over and answered the door to see who was there, didn't you? I says, yeah, as a matter of fact, I did. And I've told that to a few people too. But I was getting intrigued with how he would know this. And then he says, well, after you looked up and down the hall, then it occurred to you that somebody might be trying to send you something, and you lay down on the bed and listened to the thoughts that came in. And those next thoughts told you to study here, learn what you can, but don't get involved in the situation and move on. I says, yeah, I never told anybody that really, but you didn't listen. Instead, you got involved and stayed there anyway, didn't you? I says, yeah. He says, I was on board a craft over the top of the house that night when the Pleiadians were sending you that information. I've been having contacts with them for 29 years. And they told me in 6 years they would start contacts in America to continue the process that they started in Switzerland. And when they were going to do that, that you would be the person that I'd have contact with. So about that time, my mind was kind of, getting a little unraveled. The first thought that hit me was if someone's been reading my thoughts and putting them in there for all these years, that they still wanted to talk to me, that kind of amazed me. So we usually try to keep most of our thoughts, to ourselves. So, but at any rate, he says, I know you're going to want some validation of this and some proof. Art, whenever you're ready, you could start the high 8 camera and just kind of let it roll. As validation of what he was talking about, he says, my contacts have been going on for about 29 years, but they're quite different than the Meier situation. Meier was chosen as a contact person at birth. He says, I was not. He says, I am a Pleiadian soul transfer. There are about 20 of us on the planet. By the way, I'm going to let this tape run. It's a tape I made down at his house. This is where he lives. He has a photo book of pictures he's been shooting for years. And you'll see a lot of similarity in the craft. This is one of the remote discs here. He says that he hangs out with them because he's family. He has no interest in being a contact person, but they had asked him to do it to start getting new information and new photos out into the general public. This is, by the way, is one of the kind of pie pan remote discs. It's very similar to the one that Wendell just showed you over Meier's home. He says those are very common down over Mexico City, that they have quite a few of them stationed down there. This is a beam ship type, one of those 21-footers. Has the little antenna on it. It's 21 feet in diameter, can carry 3 people, has interdimensional capabilities. This picture was taken from inside a craft. If you look at it for a second, you'll notice that you're in the clouds kind of looking down at it. This one we have the original negative on it, and it's just been analyzed and given a pretty good clean bill of health. This one is taken through his screen door. He has a very busy patio. He lives in Miami in the middle of the city, and on his patio most of these pictures are taken, and he has a large screen door there, and this one he took very quickly through the screen. Here he's in the craft again, and you can see the craft. Now look at the top left. It's probably hard to see, but there's a green line up there. That's a mothership, what we would call a mothership. It's the first time we've seen anything cylinder in reference to the Pleiadian case. And it's green and has kind of a bright red flare right around the middle of it somehow. This one's a little hard to see. It's just several discs over some treetops. I asked him why what were the Pleiadians going to try to make known through him. They told me that they wanted to continue the situation that they had started with Meier. Wendell showed you an overhead picture. This is the one that he was making reference to. He takes most of these pictures with a Polaroid. Now look at the clouds right through the hull of the craft. When he took the picture, it took a 30th of a second to take it. The craft was disappearing, dematerializing as he took the picture. And during the shot, it was in various stages of being invisible, and you can see the clouds right through it. When he's on board the craft, he says you can't tell anything when this is happening. They power up the field around the craft, and by so doing, it distorts reflected light. The craft could be floating right over your head, and your eyes cannot see it, and they can be sitting there checking you out. These next 2 or 3 shots are at night. I had asked him after I met him if he could get some video for us, and he did. He obliged. We got him a video camera. The ones you're looking at right now, these are still shots. He took some Polaroids at the same time. I'm going to let this run just here for a few minutes while I explain the things to you. I asked him about, notice this Polaroid here, because a little later there's a video of this same action, and you'll kind of want to remember this shot. Adrian told me that there was a very unusual situation going on here on Earth. That years ago, in connection with what Wendell was telling you about, in the late 20s and 30s, that there were several old spirits born into the German plane that were of Lyrian descent, who were far older than most of the others. Because of their vast knowledge, their spiritual knowledge from previous lives, it was a fairly easy matter for them to get onto the idea of building these discs. And with very little help, they were able to do it. They had discs flying, he said, in the early 30s. They weren't flying very well, but they were also making connection with the ETs who were watching them. By the time World War II came along, the Pleiadians and other races saw what was happening in the German situation and did not want the technology involved in World War II to throw the balance of power out. So they invited several German families, Italian families, and English families who were involved in the development of this technology to leave that situation and bring their families and kids with them. Well, they brought them to a station that Adrian calls the Space City, down in South America somewhere. By the way, that's the ground the morning after the craft was there, where the ground's all burnt up. They brought these people down to South America, and once they had them down there, they weren't too sure what to do with them. They had a couple hundred of them. So they offered to educate them and seize the opportunity to start educating from people from Earth about what life is like on other planets. Adrian told me that he frequently goes back to the home planets. He's shown me pictures of the home planets. He's shown me pictures of the Space City in South America, which we're trying to get some copies of. And he tells me that there are communities now on a Pleiadian world with Earth people living there with their families, learning and studying from them. He believes there's approximately a 20-year program going on where these people may start returning to help out the situation here on Earth. He feels that it's his mission, he's taking it on personally, to start finding other people that might wanting to start coming in connection with the Pleiadians themselves. And he's teaching his own method of meditation and helping people find their own mantras. This is Adrian. If you look closely at the bottom of the picture, this is last Thanksgiving Day, a year ago in '94. These are his Pleiadian parents coming to pick him up. His girlfriend is with him and is taking the picture. If you look at the top, you can see the craft coming in. There's also 4 or 5 other craft in the area in the background, but it's a little hard to see, I know, in the dark. They picked him up and picked up his girlfriend. She gets to go on all the rides. Lucky girl. In the Meier case, his wife, Poppy, never got to go anywhere, but she gets to go along. She takes most of the pictures. They hung out for that afternoon, she said. I asked her if she'd been on other trips with him, and she says, oh, yeah, I get to go all the time. She says, I don't ask many questions. I just sit in the craft and be quiet, but she takes most of the photos. This is a little hard to see. There's 4 or 5 discs over his apartment building there, and I can't see them from over here. But now check, these are 6 discs that are just beginning to materialize. This is off his patio. It's a common thing for him to stand on the patio, which you'll see next. Take notes. They send him telepathic information. Here he is standing on the patio. Notice the disc in formation. Now, he didn't even notice they were there. His girlfriend grabbed the picture while he's taking his notes down. In the very next picture, a helicopter flies in. See the helicopter? Flies over the apartment buildings. Now look at the first 3 discs. As they see the helicopter, they begin to power up the field and dematerialize. And the camera caught him just in various stages there of dematerializing. Art, is there any chance we could hit the rewind and kind of let them see that last 30 seconds again? This is his spot out on the patio. Okay, you can let go anywhere in there. He spends a lot of time on the patio. He says they talk to him all the time in his head, and he writes down all of his notes. He doesn't hear a voice. He gets the stream of visions, like watching a movie. Then he has to translate it, and then later they come, and then he cleans up his notes. Now, Art, if you don't mind doing that one more time back to the same spot, I want you... Excuse me? Okay, I don't know how good it pauses, but I wanted to stop on that one if I can. Okay, good. Now take a close look at this picture. Wendell just showed you some discs that look almost exactly like that, didn't he? The original, what's called Vril levitation design that was designed by these Germans back in the 30s, what you're looking at are 9 Vril craft made in South America by Earth people who are learning from the Pleiadians. These are not Pleiadian craft. The next picture with the helicopter is also made here in South America. He has been to the Space City, and when he will let me have them, he has a nice group of beautiful photos walking around down there with discs everywhere. When he got down there, he had his Polaroid with him, and they told him they were going to be there for a while and let him hang out. He got out of the craft with his Polaroid and turned around. He was very surprised because he had not been there before. But he said it looked like an airport. There were rows of discs sitting on the ground parked all over the place. They are Zeta discs. The Zetas are down there. There are Pleiadian, very large Pleiadian discs. There's a whole score of German Vril craft, even some old Hanabus down there. And pretty much all the craft that we've seen throughout the Meier case are all parked down there also. There was about 100 of them. In his photo book, if he'll let me have them, which I'll get them yet, they're sitting right on the ground with people working on them. What he's concerned about is he says that when people begin to find out that a select group of people from Europe have had some extra privileges over the last 30, 40 years, they've gone to other worlds, they've had children on other worlds, they no longer speak German, Italian, or English, they've learned on a Pleiadian world, and now they're coming back here to help their own planet. They're having contacts with people all over the planet. Sometimes they say they're from the Pleiades, sometimes they say from Andromeda, sometimes they say they're from Orion, but it's all pretty much coming from the same source, I believe. They're trying to help people out all over the planet by raising our consciousness. They are very aware that in the near future we have some very difficult times ahead of us. They feel if they were to come out and say our parents were Germans, that no one's going to pay much attention, and the huge amount of prejudice and hate we still have on the planet would distort anything that we might learn from them. I think more and more we're going to find out in the near future contacts all over the planet. The crafts are starting to look the same. The message is starting to be the same. Ladies and gentlemen, there's over 100,000 people right now from Earth and their descendants living on Pleiadian planets learning. These were the people that are starting to come back here over the next few years that are probably going to make a major difference in the way our civilization goes. Okay, Art, let her go. If you watch this one closely as the camera goes by, 2 pictures down, you'll see one of those Hanibus that Wendell was talking about that was just taken a few months ago. We thought they were extinct, but they're not. Right at the bottom, see them? You want to try it one more time, Art? If it has a, you can freeze there. Well, look down at the bottom right. We'll try it one more time. Wham. Okay. That's a German Haunebu parked at the Space City that's about 30, 40 years old. They built them to last, and you can see two men servicing them there. He has probably 30, 40 pictures in this caliber walking around down at the Space City of all different types of craft. So there is a serious connection going on between different people on our planet and the extraterrestrials. Okay, Art, let her go. Adrian has a special study group that he's starting now. He feels that the way that he could possibly be a benefit here was to find certain people that he thinks are ready and guide them through meditation in their own awareness and help them find themselves spiritually. Apparently the people that are, most of the people anyway, that are making the connections with them are people that through meditation learn to get into a balanced state with clear thought so they can receive information from them. This is another shot where the craft is just dematerializing. Fortunately, he shot a lot of these. They're Polaroids with a little cheap 1995 Sure-Shot camera. It's got a 1/30 of a second plastic lens on it. Just like in the Meier case, we have a man here getting the shots of a lifetime, and he's taking them with a very inexpensive camera. We've purchased him a new 35 millimeter zoom, autofocus, auto wind, and a case of film. So hopefully he will start getting some more. And just recently, yesterday, I had someone volunteer to buy him one of those new $4,000 triple chip Panasonics to take some stuff. So I think our quality of our pictures will increase a little bit. This next section is a little slow. It's a night video. And if you know where the fast forward is, Art, fast forward for about 2 minutes and it'll move on down. I'd ask him to get some video for us so we could see it, and he obliged. As Adrian's situation is a little different than the Meier situation. When Meier's contact started, it was like going to school. They came by almost on a weekly basis, and it was almost a classroom situation where he would ask questions, they would give answers, they would teach him things about history, philosophy, and spirituality that they wanted to. Adrian's situation is quite different. He never knows when they're coming by. They treat him like a lost relative. When they do come by, they pick him up, tell him to be quiet, they got things to do. He hangs out with them for a day or two. He can't usually ask for any favors, and even for the summer, they told him they're kind of busy, and they just left him alone. He wasn't even sure when they were coming back. So we have a little different situation going here. We're never sure exactly what's happening. When I asked him to get some video, he says, all right, I'll try. And he got the camera, and he went out at night to take the video. This video, by the way, is just south of Miami on the beach. He was directed for him and his girlfriend to go down there, which they did. First, there was just one craft until they parked the car and got their bearings and set out. Then two came in, and Art, you can fast forward a little bit more, and then we'll get a little group thing going here. Okay, now we're pretty good. This is similar to some of the shots we've also seen down in Mexico City. In that area down there, there's quite a bit of shots being seen at night with groups of them coming in and making formations like this. He actually ran the camera here for about 15 minutes, so that's why we're fast forwarding a little bit. Besides, it gets a little more exciting here in a minute. Okay, Art, roll it on forward a little bit. You can take it down to where the screen will suddenly kind of go bright red. Should be about another minute or so. We've put together a collection of most all of these pictures, quite a few more that aren't on here today too. Have a new videotape called The Miami Contacts, and it'll be out next week. I have a table somewhere over here in the exhibit room. I haven't been to see it yet, but we'll have some forms there for anybody that wants to get it. All these pictures and quite a few more will be on there. And yeah, I've prepared a tape tomorrow night, which will have quite a bit more on there too. So you can see that. I'm not sure what time it's showing, but some 8 o'clock. Okay, I'm showing it at 8 o'clock. Okay, here we go. Coming up right after this, there's two sections here where there's three of them, and then right after that, there's a pretty interesting daytime shot. Most of his contacts, since he's quite telepathic, he says, they get in touch with him and let him know they're around. And since he lives in a centralized area in Miami, it's common for them to stay cloaked and they just communicate with him. And then occasionally they'll let him know they're outside if he wants to get a picture. And on this particular occasion coming up out here, he was actually in the shower. And they told him they were outside, and if he wanted to get some video, he could. So he grabbed his camera, ran in the living room, and you'll see it here in a second. The craft's outside, and he's taking the picture through the screen because he just noticed that outside there's a bunch of people playing golf. And he doesn't have any clothes on. So he's telling them to hang on for a minute while he gets some pants on, and that's why the camera's jumping around. And he doesn't want to open the screen, so it's throwing the focus off. So they came back later that night, and he walked out on the patio, and they let him get a little better shot. Now, you'll remember from the earlier shots, there's a water right in front, and those are the apartment buildings. I'd say those are a good quarter-mile away on the other side of the park over there in those buildings. Yeah, it's, you can see the lights coming out off it. I've got a second generation copy here, so I had to inform him that we like originals. He was concerned about tape costs, so he took his original, copied it over to a VHS, and then redid the original because he only had one tape cassette. So I've had to educate him a little bit about saving all those originals. This is that craft up in the clouds again. You can see the antenna coming out the top up there. This is, by the way, one of the ones we have the original negative on. We've got them now on several of the pictures, and I'm just beginning to get them analyzed by some independent study imaging people. And so far they've given this shot anyway a real clean bill of health. They couldn't find anything wrong with it. Everything matches up. There's no tampering with the film. He doesn't have too many negatives. Most of these pictures, unfortunately, were Polaroids with a rubber band around them and his dresser. He didn't really expect to ever show them to anyone. This one's most unusual. There's a shadow on the ground. He got a telepathic message, looked outside expecting his Pleiadian friends, and there was a life form out there in some sort of environment suit. He went outside with his camera, and the being forced his hands down to the ground and made him take a picture of the shadow. And then as he raised his arms back up to talk to the being, he vanished right in front of him. He doesn't have any clue at all where the life form came from. Now here's a couple of shots on the patio. Again, he's lowered the camera down. You can see the disc there and through the bars on the patio, trying to get something in the foreground so you can see them. Now look on the far left, just barely in there. That's one of the German Hanebus from the Space City. That's a 40-year-old craft. And the three on the right are crafts made in Space City down there by American people with the aid of the Pleiadians. They're teaching them their technology. They're taking them back and forth to other worlds. Their philosophy seems to be to take a small percentage of us, educate us in matters of spirituality, higher consciousness, how to live a higher quality life. Okay, you can stop the tape there, Art. And you can start the VHS whenever you want to. Their philosophy seems to be to educate a few of us that could come back and then educate the rest of us. They realize that it would be rather futile to try to make a landing on the White House lawn or to take over the planet. Watch right here, see it disappearing? This is that craft you saw at night, and it's a frame-by-frame shot of it disappearing. This is how they power the field up and how it disappears. We're always wondering why you can't see them. They have that ability, and there we've got it on film, frame by frame. They power, the craft is still setting right there, and you can't see it. It didn't go anywhere. There's a series on here now of several nighttime shots. You can see he's panning back to show the foreground, how far away that he is. That's where he lives. He's got a pretty interesting patio. I think I'm just going to go down there and, rent space on his patio for a few weeks and kind of hang out. I think maybe one more time we'll get to see it. Yeah, this is another one of the same one. I didn't have time to edit all these together properly. This talk came a little quicker than I had anticipated. I haven't found anybody else that has seen these. I found 2 other people in his meditation study group who've gone out with him and seen the craft. One of the ladies, just during a meditation, asked him how to see the craft. He gave her some clues on what to meditate on, and when she left that night, one of the craft followed over her car all the way home. I wish I knew. Wendell and I discussed that one night. Wendell's guessing southeast Ecuador. I don't have a guess at all, and Adrian doesn't know. And he said it really wouldn't do you much good if you did know. There's no way to get to it, and with the technology they have, they wouldn't let you in anyway. So there are no roads to it. It's somewhere in South America, but I really don't know where. Now, this is some new one. I got a call about a week ago from him, said they came by again. This next series now for about 3 or 4 minutes was all shot on October 20th. And again, he's on his patio, and you can see the telephone poles off in the distance. It's 3 or 4 blocks away. Right in the middle of the telephone pole, here comes the disc. It'll move to the left. And they're talking to him in his head now, telling him to get ready, and they're giving him some instructions. They've asked him if he can leave the house. I asked if we could get some more video in some area where the craft was a little more obvious, other things to compare it to. So they said they would. And that's what you're going to see next. They're going to lead him around town and down the freeway and follow him. Again, you can see the apartment buildings down at the bottom here. Now where the clock on the VCR is running, we're 10:03 on October 20th. And he's got the thing zoomed out about as far as he can go. See how far away it is? Now, to fake something like these next shots, you'd have to have some serious cooperation with somebody in a helicopter, some sort of large illuminated object that half the city would see. It's interesting that, watch this one, you're going to see it now for a minute or so. It's flickering. There's a light flickering off the bottom of it and going around it. And this is very similar to video taken by other people in Mexico and other areas. I've seen video shot down in Mexico, and probably somebody here at the Congress may have some that looks very similar to this. It is my belief this is happening all over. I think that we have one group down in South America that is somehow coordinating contacts with people all over the planet. And they are keeping them all separate. They're not allowing the contact person to know who the other individual is. Meier always believed he was the only one, and I think he really believed that. It just doesn't turn out to be true. There are people having contacts all over the planet. They don't tell them. They tell them they're special. They tell them that they're unique. In almost every case, too, they all have been told that there is some sort of spiritual connection through past lives, which may be true. Meier had many beliefs of who he had been historically in past lives connected to the growth of our civilization. Adrian is the same situation. He also believes that he has been several rather important historic people involved in the development of life here on our planet. And it's quite possible that's exactly what they've been doing. Pulling people off from the other side, bringing them into physical life at a time when they're needed, and causing great change in our history. It's 10:14. This went on for an hour. The tape goes clear to 10:58. He's just sent me copies of it, brief little excerpts that you'll see. We're at 10:14 here. We jump to 10:40 here. Now, any second now, we're going to be out on the freeway. That's a jumpy tape. No. I asked him if they did, especially when you see the stuff on the freeway. I mean, you'd think everybody had a wreck. But he said no, that particular night, October 20th, he knew they were coming. Actually, he did tell me about a week earlier that he would be having a contact that night. He says that the certain characteristics in the magnetic field of the planet itself facilitate having contacts better on some times than others. Because the Pleiadian discs that we're looking at here, he says, have to convert themselves from fine matter into solid form so that we can see them. Now here we're on the freeway, and the disc is floating over some buildings over there. Here it's over the Miami airport. I asked him, did anybody else see them? And he says, no, that they opened the dimension door, brought the craft in, they tuned it to his wavelength, his brainwave, whatever, and he's the only one that can see it. That's a good question. I wish I understood that technology myself. He says even on some occasions he doesn't see the craft. They tell him where to aim, and when he can only see it by the camera. When he looks through the camera, he can see it and not with the naked eye. But that is rather baffling. It's certainly a technology that's a little bit beyond our understanding. If they can control reflected light, that's one thing, but how they could narrow it down to just one individual is something else. Here we have people, and it's flying right along down by the freeway now. Excuse me? It appears to be. I see it's jumping around a lot, and it didn't before. Is that something you're doing, Art, or? Mm-hmm. Well, this is a slow-mo that he did of the thing where it's moving behind trees. I cleaned it up a lot on the tape so you can see it frame by frame. We're not getting a real good representation here, but well, they seem to be. That situation happened several times in the Meier case where several people that drove him out to context took cameras and were not able to get pictures themselves while Billy was nearby getting a shot. So I think that they somehow managed to confine it to the individual. These next pictures here, on my last trip down there, I was flipping through his photo book again, and he had inserted some pictures in here I hadn't seen before. Here's the top of one of those discs. So I've got my camcorder with me, and I just added them on here. So I thought you'd like to see this. By the way, this disc here, the Pleiadian disc, has time travel capabilities. This is most of the early craft, the levitation craft that the Germans were designing in the 30s, could travel 30 to 40,000 miles an hour, and they were able to visit all of the planets in our solar system even in the late 30s, and were building craft in the 40s. Because of their association with the ETs, they've kind of disconnected themselves for their concern for our day-to-day living, as you might well imagine, and have built a variety of different types of crafts and have been very involved now in their own interplanetary discovery. Here we've got a picture from the top of the cupola of one of those, and you can almost see the framework of the craft, and here's one right below. Now, I'm not sure how these pictures were taken. He hasn't explained them yet. But we're obviously pretty close, or else somebody had a pretty good zoom lens when they got it. It looks as though the air or the clouds right below the craft is somehow being disturbed by the field of the ship.
Are they aware that you are showing these pictures publicly and they discuss that?
Yes, they are, and apparently I've been told anyway. That's my job here. That's why he asked me to do this, because he doesn't want to. So. I've asked them if I can, turnabout's fair play, could I go aboard the craft and meet them? And he's been him-hawing now for months, he says, trying to get me a ride, but it hasn't happened yet. I keep my camera ready, though. We did have one sighting about a week or so ago. My wife and I were driving back here from Vegas, and down by Zizek's Road by Baker, we saw a large one come right by us and go right down behind the mountain. This is something sitting on the ground. Adrian says it's a type of remote craft. And he didn't take the picture. They gave him the picture, but he was not familiar with it either. Well, up until he told me they were building him here, I had no idea. We don't really at this point. We're just trying to figure things out. This one here, which is a beam ship type, is very similar to the style that the Germans were building years ago. I would tend to think that that one is probably designed and still built here. He tells me even the BMW is still involved and makes parts and sends them down to the Space City for some of the discs. You believe that? This is a view from the top of the Pleiadian disk, which is quite different. We also have to begin to consider, I asked Adrian one day, I says, well, perhaps we should consider the idea that there are no Pleiadians at all. Maybe we're just looking at continued advancement in the German situation. And he says, oh no, there's a vast difference in the Germans and the Pleiadians. That's all the tape, Art. You can bring the lights up. He tells me that the main difference is between the Pleiadians and the Germans, when they visit, are no different than you and I. They look just the same as we do. They're the same size. And I'm sure Wendell gets many reports of the same thing. They could pass in a crowd. He tells me at the Space City, when he was there, a Pleiadian craft came in, and he says the place gets like church. The crafts are larger. When the craft sets down, everybody gets very reverent. The Pleiadians are larger. They're 7 to 8 feet tall. He says you can best describe them as like perfect beings. There's no flaws. There's no lines on their skin. He says for the most part, they are so incredibly spiritually advanced that just being around them, he says, puts you a little bit in awe. Because you can tell they know everything about you. They can sense your thoughts. They feel you. And there's nothing that you can hide from them. But he says they're very peaceful. Immediately you feel tremendous sort of love and compassion from them. They don't talk much. He says you might ask them a question. They'll pretty much know what you're going to ask before you ask it. They'll pause for a second, scan your thoughts to see how well you're going to deal with the answer, decide to tell you, what to tell you, give you the answer very succinctly and quietly, and stop. And he says there's a vast difference. He says they come in and out of the Space City all the time, and he says everybody down there reveres them pretty much like God's down there. So, well, that's, I think, our kind of our latest Pleiadian update.
We got about 5 minutes for questions.
Okay, we got about 5 minutes for questions. Anything for Wendell or me? Anything you'd like to ask? Come to the mic, Bob says, so we can get it on the tape there.
Did they give you any indication which particular star in the Pleiades system they're coming from?
The new contacts, Adrian says, are all from the Alcyone area. During the Meier years, Meier was always very emphatic that all of his contacts were one group from Tegeta, and he believed they were from only one solar system. Adrian says that in the Alcyone area, which is the principal area where there are they come from, there are hundreds of planets with civilized life there. And the underground facilities here on Earth have been built and maintained by the Alcyone group for a long period of time.
During one of the previous presentations by Norio, we were shown satellite capabilities of the government. Is there a possibility the government is aware of Space City, and if so, what's the situation on that?
Yes, they are. He says that the higher levels above governments, everybody knows what's going on. They're aware of the Space City. It doesn't do them any good. They can't come in and out anyway. And he says there are people at the Space City, representatives from governments and from the CIA, that the CIA to some extent has been kind of a liaison between them and governments for a long period of time.
Thank you.
Vladimir, how are you?
One question, Vladimir.
Actually, I wanted to make a little note on the first photograph that Wendell showed, which was a photograph of the Vril Odin craft built in '44, a craft that was the first terrestrially built craft with warp speed capability that departed on the first interstellar flight 50 years this April. So that was the reason we made the big documentary for Nippon Television, and this will be the topic of my little unauthorized presentation tomorrow evening.
Bob?
Okay, thank you.